Page 67. Yes, it was Obedia, ma'am. And how did you get into it, Caddie? Ma'am, he wouldn't take his feet off Maggie's desk, and he said he wasn't scared of anybody in school, and I hit his legs with a ruler. And I'm not scared neither, growled Obedia. I can do what I please, and nobody dares stop me. I done what I pleased last summer, and nobody dares stop me. Nobody dares stop me now. He set his bearskin cap straight on his head and looked at the teacher with defiant eyes. The teacher looked back at Obedia. She was a small woman, and now she was pale and trembling. It was a breathless moment. Even the youngest children knew instinctively that something was at stake. In a moment more they would find out whether Miss Parker or Obedia would rule the school this year. Obedia began to grin, a slow spreading grin, pushed back his cap, and spat contemptuously on the schoolroom floor. Then something polite and ladylike in Miss Parker snapped. She caught Obedia by the back of the neck with a suddenness that took him completely off guard. Now, would I do that? Would anybody do that with any sort of... No, you wouldn't snap a crack of the neck. You would, I don't know, figure it out as it went along. Down the aisle, she marched him to the front of the room. Obedia Jones, she cried, I'm going to punish you before the whole school. Stand up and take your medicine. I'll lick him for you, ma'am, shouted Tom. No, Tom, keep Asher off, and leave the rest to me. It's Obedia or I now. She whipped out a ruler and laid it sharply across that section of Obedia's person on which he was accustomed to sit. No. Maybe it was super bad. I don't know. We'll see. For the second time he yelped with surprise and pain. He had a slow brain, and he had never really expected to have his authority questioned. When it finally dawned upon him that Teacher Dast, he began to struggle, but he was too late. Miss Parker had already tasted the fruits of victory. She dealt him 3 more good smacks, and then with a shake she let him go. Now, Obedia, she said, go to the woodshed. You may either go home and never enter the schoolhouse again, or you may come back in 5 minutes and behave yourself like a gentleman the rest of the time you are here. Make your choice. Obedia went out. Now, children, said Miss Parker, start the multiplication tables. They turned their scared faces toward the front of the room and began in wavering voices to sing the multiplication tables to the tune of Yankee Doodle. Presently, the woodshed door creaked a little on its hinges. Go right on singing. Don't look around, admonished Miss Parker crisply. Her pale cheeks were red, and now she was no longer trembling. Through the thin sound of their singing, they heard Obedia coming slowly down the aisle. He had brought an armful of wood, which he put carefully in the box. He had left his bearskin cap in the hall, and he had combed his hair. He sat down in his seat and folded his hands. Obedia had met his Waterloo, and Teacher was at last the greatest person in her little world. Page 70, Attic Magic. The snow continued to fall and drifted high and deep. It was always warm indoors, and there was always turkey to eat. But sometimes out of doors it was too cold and the drifts too high for the children to walk to school. Then Robert Ireton hitched old Betsy to the sledge and drove them there, their feet resting on heated stones, and wrapped in mufflers to the tips of their noses. The children huddled together to keep warm. The bells of Betsy's harness jingled, the runners creaked and groaned in the dry snow, and sometimes Robert Ireton sang, Say, Ike, did you ever go to an Irishman's shanty? Sure, it's there where the whiskey is plenty. With his pipe in his gob, is Paddy so gay, no king in his palace so happy as he. There's a 3-legged stool and a table to match, and the door of the shanty it hooks with a latch. There's a pig in the sty and a cow in the stable, and sure they are fit of the scraps from the table. They die if confined, but they roam at their ace, and come into the shanty whenever they please. But say, Ike, Paddy's a boy. Say, like Patty's the boy, echoed the young Woodlawns at the top of their voices, above the jingling of the bells and the creaking of the runners. Their breath rose in a steaming cloud of their singing mouths. The people in the village heard them coming and said, "It's them Woodlawn children. Bless their souls." After the first tumultuous day, school had settled into a quiet routine. Obedia was often sulky, but he was no longer rebellious. Teacher had taught him his lesson, and Asher took his cue from Obedia. For Caddie, the chief delight of school was Saturday morning spelling bee. On that day there was a review of the week's work, and after that they could choose sides from Spellbound. Each week of the two best spellers, who stood out from the rest, were allowed to choose their teams for the next week. Caddie and Tom both had the sportsman's love of any test of skill. But Caddie was the better speller. She pored over the tattered spelling book in excited concentration, and she was usually the first to toss back her curls and fling up her hand to let teacher know that she was ready to spell. She and Jane Fletcher, Jane's brother Sam, were usually the last ones standing at the end of the match, and then it was a fierce struggle to see which of them would go down first. The teacher had to turn to the back of the speller to pick a lily, or siliquoise, or titillate, before either Caddie or the Fleshers would be spelled down and have to take a seat, laughing confusion and defeat. As much rivalry entered into this choosing the teams as in the actual spelldowns. The best sellers were promptly snapped up, and the worst ones left simmering in their shame until the end of the choosing. Okay, that's 6. This is 72, so we went 67 to 72.